Shalom, this is Daniel Stern, and today is April 3rd, and we're here with our updates on what's been going on in the region and around. And I'd like to start today talking about Egypt, and in particular the Sinai Peninsula and as it relates to the peace process with Israel. Now you can look up our previous dedicated video to the situation in Egypt, and we'll put a link in the description to that one. But I want to talk about the fact that Israel has formally lodged a complaint and will bring it up in conversation with the United States that the Egyptian army is increasing the size of the airports, the lengths of the takeoff and landing strips, increasing the size of the harbors and the lengths of the wharfs, as well as putting troops above the agreed upon limit in the area. This is something that is very concerning in Israel because many in Israel believe that this buildup, the only intention is to attack Israel. Now, Israel and Egypt have had a peace treaty since the late 70s, early 80s. That period has been a reasonably pleasant peace treaty for the beginning, and since then has turned into a very cold peace treaty where the governments are in agreement and there's peace, but the civilians are not happy with each other. There are some terrorist attacks from the Sinai and in Egypt in general against Israeli targets and Israeli tourists, and the general vibe, the general feel of the Egyptian population is mostly hatred and hostility towards Israel. So consequently, there is a big concern within Israel about such troop buildups. So we'll see how that develops. The next thing on our list is a jump to Iraq. We haven't talked about Iraq in quite a while, and today what I want to tell you about Iraq is that there's reports that Hezbollah from Lebanon are planning on executing attacks against Israel from Iraq, the purpose of which is to avoid increasing the attacks of the IDF of Israel against Lebanese targets by being able to claim some kind of plausible deniability that the attacks are not coming from Lebanon but are coming from Iraq. Similarly, in Syria, there is Hamas operatives that are planning to attack from Syria to Israel in the same type of being able to avoid accountability and responsibility and thus not have Israel attack back in Lebanon or in the Gaza Strip or in Judea and Samaria for such attacks. And in regard to this odd cooperation that we can see between Hamas and Syria, between Hezbollah and Iraq, and the whole complex network between the countries, there was an attack yesterday in the Dakhia in Beirut, and a target was hit, a Hezbollah agent who is the main player in a very large plan that Hezbollah and Hamas together had planned to attack targets, Israeli targets outside of Israel, with an estimated death toll being in the hundreds. This plan was scuttled and foiled due to the targeting of this major player. If there's more news on that, I'll share it in the future. But going back to Syria, Turkey has said that with Syrian approval, it is going to take over the T4 airbase, which is a major aircraft base in the central part of Syria, slightly to the north. And the problem with that, as far as Israel is concerned, is that the Turkish Hisar air defense systems are quite potent and might limit Israeli air freedom in Syria. Now, moving back quickly to Lebanon, Shar al-Jabur, a Christian leader, has stated that the existence of Hezbollah as an armed organization gives Israel the legitimacy to attack, and that Lebanon, and he included himself in a plural we, the Lebanese citizen, the Lebanese government, must bring an end to the situation that Hezbollah exists as an armed organization. Jumping far out back to Diego Garcia and the other regions, it's reported that the U.S. has over 25 transport planes that just flew in from South Korea to Diego Garcia, and to other bases in the Middle East, carrying with them Patriots and THAAD missile defense systems. So they are preparing. Additionally, it was recently reported that F-35 planes and many others, there are of course B-1, B-52s, lots of forces are gathering, not to mention the additional naval forces. There doesn't seem to be a large gathering of ground forces, but there seems to be an incredibly large gathering of air and naval forces that indicate that things are coming. Now, moving a little bit closer to home, regarding the Israeli-Gaza deal that was proposed and rejected, proposed by Israel and rejected by Hamas, there was a deal that on day one, 11 Israeli hostages would be released, all of them living, one of them being a U.S. citizen holding hostage. On day 5, information would be given on all the hostages, and on day 10, 16 more dead hostages would be delivered to Israel, and that would buy 40 days of ceasefire. But as I say, Hamas has currently rejected that deal. I'm sure that somewhere or another negotiations are still ongoing. Now, I've mentioned in the past, speaking of Gaza, I've mentioned in the past Pallywood, the Palestinian Hollywood, the fake films, the fake news. We talked about it when the claims of 500 killed by an Israeli strike on a hospital, which turned out to not have happened, that it was a jihad missile, Islamic jihad missile that failed to launch properly and it didn't kill 500. We talked about it when we talked about the battles for Jenin over 20 years ago. And here's an interesting report. In the March report of the Palestinian Healthcare Organization, the official government-run, that is Hamas-run, that is terrorist-run organization, miraculously, by magic, 3,400 confirmed dead disappeared, as if they never existed. Maybe as if they were never confirmed dead. And of them, 1,080 were children. The numbers jump around because it's so much easier to claim massacre and thousands of dead and then a month, 2 months, 3 months later say, oh, well, actually it never happened. Like in the Jenin battle where they claimed thousands, over 1,000 died. This was made by the PLO, by Hamas, and even by the UN. In the end, only 56 died. Of them, more than half were terrorists. So it's much easier to claim massacres and then take it back once nobody cares anymore. Now, moving far out of the Middle East, but again, it all connects, we had a recent report that in France, a European Union court, not a French court, mind you, a European Union court gave down a verdict that Marine Le Pen, the head of the right-wing party in France, and also the front runner for the 2027 election, cannot participate in the election. So, if you get this, a European Union court, which of course I would say is generally liberal, right-wing, progressive, has just ousted a potential runner in a French election. And we can see that this type of thing is what happens. A gentleman who I enjoy watching, Ben Shapiro, I'm sure many of you have heard of him, stated that the Democratic, liberal, progressive left, when they cannot win an election, they use Lawfare, and that this runs from Le Pen through Bibi and through Bolsonaro. And I want to add President Trump into that because we saw how much of lawfare there was against him before the election as well. So as you can see, this is indeed a pattern that the left tries to remove candidates that they know that the people want to lead them, using trumped up charges, pun intended. Now, last but not least for today, a brief deep dive into a project called Mirkam HaChaim, the Tapestry of Life. Mirkam HaChaim is a road in the east of Jerusalem, between Jerusalem and Ma'ale Adumim in what's known as E1, which is an area that currently has a conflict between who will control it and who will live there. There are many illegal Palestinian settlements. The best known of them is Khan el-Ahmar, Palestinian Bedouins that settled illegally in an area and are just there squatting. And between the Jewish settlements of Ma'ale Adumim and Jerusalem. Now, both sides wish to expand their populations there in order to make facts on the grounds. Jews want to have people living in that territory, E1, which is between Jerusalem and Ma'ale Adumim, in order for that entire area to be Jewish. Palestinians would like Palestinians to live in the area between Hizmeh and Azariah, which is also between Ma'ale Adumim and Jerusalem, but north to south of the E1 area. Jerusalem is east, Ma'ale Adumim is west, Hizmeh is north, and Azariah is south. So both sides are trying to populate that area to make it run completely with their group. Now, what this Mirkam HaChaim road that was approved on Sunday is a $300 million project to build tunnels under E1 from north to south, thus allowing the traffic and to be under it and not over it for the Palestinians, and to have the Road 1, which is the main road from the Dead Sea to Tel Aviv, running through Jerusalem as well, to be primarily for Israeli citizens and or Jews, but not just, and in such a way stop the Palestinian encroachment on that land. So this is an initiative that has been in the works for decades, but was only approved a few days ago. We'll have to wait and see what legal obstacles there will be to it, such as the Supreme Court of Israel, that will most likely stop it, at least temporarily. But hopefully this will benefit all, because it will in any case reduce the traffic from north Hizmeh to south Azariah, and reduce traffic from east Jerusalem to west Ma'ale Adumim. So in that regard, it'll at least be good. As for who will develop the land and who will live there, only time will tell. Now, thank you all for joining us today on March 3rd. And please, as always, if you have any comments, if you have any questions, write them below and I'll do my best to answer. In fact, this report about Mirkam HaChaim Road is a direct response to a friend of mine that was asking about Jewish takeover of land, of Palestinian land. And since it came up, I decided let's give a few words about it. So God bless you all, and shalom.